My mom yelled, "You have 48 hours to get your stuff out. That house is your sister's now." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just went quiet and started preparing. 2 days later, when my sister walked through that front door, she wished she never had. But before I tell you what I did, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the one doing all the work while someone else got all the credit? If you have, drop a yes in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's here with me. When my mother, Erin, screamed those words at me, they didn't echo. They just hung there, heavy and damp, like the humid savannah air outside. 48 hours. That was the deadline she gave me to vacate the life I had spent 5 years rebuilding. My sister, Kelsey, needed the house. She needed it for her wedding. For her aesthetic. For her followers. I stood in the foyer and looked around. The hand-restored wainscoting I had sanded down until my fingerprints were practically gone. The custom crown molding I hunted down at a salvage yard in Atlanta and installed myself. My father, Ryan, wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floorboards I had paid to have refinished the year before. This wasn't just a house. It was a decaying Victorian money pit my late grandmother, Eleanor, had left behind. 5 years ago, it was headed for condemnation. The roof was collapsing. The foundation was splitting. The city was ready to level it. My parents were broke. They couldn't afford the $165,000 it would take to save it. So I paid it. Every single dollar. I was 24, barely launching my interior architecture firm, and I poured my entire savings into that place. I spent weekends scraping lead paint and rewiring outlets instead of going on dates. I skipped vacations to fund a new slate roof. I did it because my father once looked me in the eye, tears filling his, and said, "Haley, this will always be your home. You're saving our family's legacy." I believed him. That was my mistake. I thought I was investing in my future. But standing there while my mother checked her watch, eager to start staging rooms for Kelsey's bridal suite, I realized something. I hadn't been investing. I'd been paying rent. Expensive, emotional rent. In my family, love was never free. It was a transaction, and I was always the one picking up the tab. My therapist calls it the invisible chain of the survivor. When you grow up feeling like an option instead of a priority, you learn to make yourself useful. You become the fixer, the provider, the one who solves problems before they explode. You do it because you're terrified that if you stop being useful, they'll stop loving you. I didn't just pay $165,000 to save a house. I paid it to secure my place in that family. I thought if I made the house perfect, maybe I'd finally be perfect enough. But Kelsey, she never had to pay. She just had to exist. She was the golden child, the influencer with the flawless smile and the curated life. She didn't fix things. She was the prize. I was just the maintenance crew. And now that the maintenance was done, my usefulness had expired. The house was beautiful, magazine ready, which meant I was no longer necessary. I was being discarded like a contractor whose job was finished. "Fine," I said. My voice didn't even shake. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. 48 hours. My mother exhaled, almost disappointed there wasn't a fight. "Good," she said. "Make sure the guest room is clear. Kelsey wants her makeup station there." I walked upstairs, up the steps I had reinforced with my own hands, and closed my bedroom door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the vintage brass doorknob I'd spent 3 weeks tracking down on eBay. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And it was mine. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call a moving company. I called a specialized architectural salvage crew I'd worked with on high-end renovations. "Hey, Mike," I said when he answered. "I have a rush job. Full strip out. Everything goes." "Everything?" he asked. "Everything," I replied. "If I bought it, it goes. Especially the fixtures." The clock ticked down. I became a ghost in my own home. I packed my clothes quietly while my mother buzzed around measuring windows for drapes she wouldn't be paying for. She didn't notice me tagging items with blue painter's tape. She didn't notice the salvage crew parking in the alley. When they began, it was surgical. We didn't damage anything. We simply uninstalled. The vintage crystal chandelier in the dining room. Gone. The custom marble island. Lifted and crated. The smart appliances. Disconnected and removed. Imported Italian faucets. Unscrewed. Drapes. Blinds. Cabinet hardware. Light switch covers, antique doorknobs, all gone. We replaced them with the cheapest contractor-grade fixtures I could find at the hardware store. By the time the 48 hours were up, the house wasn't a home. It was a shell, an echo chamber of bare walls and subflooring. It looked exactly like what it was, a structure stripped of its soul. I stood in the foyer one last time. The walls were scarred where sconces used to hang. The floors looked dull without rugs. It was dark, empty, hollow. It looked like the physical manifestation of my absence. I dropped the key onto the floor. The metal clink echoed through the room. Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. I checked into a hotel on the other side of Savannah. I ordered room service. I took a long, hot shower. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't worry about a leaking pipe or a drafty window. When I finally turned my phone back on, it nearly overheated from notifications. 17 missed calls from my mother. 12 from my father. 30 texts from Kelsey. I opened one from her. All caps. You ruined my aesthetic. This is sick. Put it back. Then a voicemail from my father. His voice was shaking with rage. Haley, this is theft. You stole the fixtures. You stole the value of this house. You are going to prison. Put it back or I'm calling the police. I listened twice. They weren't upset that I was gone. They weren't asking where I was sleeping. They were furious about the amenities. They weren't shocked because I was hurt. They were shocked because the appliance had stopped working. This is what happens when cruelty becomes normal. They had normalized exploiting me so completely that my departure felt like theft. They believed they were entitled to my money, my labor, my taste. They thought the house came with a Haley warranty. Well, the warranty had expired. The next morning, a process server handed me a thick envelope in the hotel lobby. My father wasn't bluffing. He was suing me. Destruction of property, theft of fixtures, intentional infliction of emotional distress. He was demanding more than $200,000 in damages. For a moment, panic hit me hard. Had I gone too far? Fixtures are legally considered part of real estate once attached. Maybe my anger had crossed a line. I called Grace. Grace wasn't just my best friend. She was a ruthless family law attorney who specialized in estate disputes. She had been my grandmother Eleanor's executor. Meet me at the office, she said. Bring everything. We sat in her glass-walled conference room, the lawsuit between us like a live grenade. She flipped through it calmly. This is a temper tantrum, she finally said. He's throwing legal spaghetti at the wall. But we'll respond. We spent hours reviewing every receipt, every invoice, every permit. I had documentation for everything. But Grace wasn't focused on the renovation paperwork. She was digging into the original property transfer files from 5 years earlier. She pulled out an old folder labeled 2019 Ryan Legal. Haley, she said slowly, do you remember the lawsuit your dad had? The supplier dispute. I nodded. He'd been sued for non-payment and was terrified of losing everything. Grace slid a document across the table. It wasn't a receipt. It was a deed. A quitclaim deed, she said. They transferred the property fully to you to hide it from creditors. The memory came rushing back. They had told me it was temporary. A tax strategy. A protective measure. They said they'd transfer it back once the lawsuit was settled. They never did, Grace said, almost laughing. To transfer it back, they would have had to pay fees and taxes. They didn't want to. They assumed you'd never check. She looked at me with a sharp smile. Legally, you are not the tenant. You are not the contractor. You are the sole owner of that house. Your parents aren't landlords. They're squatters. The room tilted. For 5 years, I hadn't been renovating their house. I had been renovating mine. They had been living rent-free in my property, and then tried to evict me from it. The fear vanished. In its place was something colder. Clearer. Letter, Grace asked, or in person? In person, I said. The next morning, the Savannah sun was blazing. The driveway was packed with cars. Caterers unloading trays. Florists setting up arrangements. Rental chairs lining the lawn. My parents stood on the porch, stressed but triumphant. They thought they had erased me. I didn't arrive alone. A sheriff's cruiser pulled in behind me, lights flashing silently. 2 deputies stepped out. My father saw me and stormed down the steps, face purple with rage. You've got nerve showing up here. Get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing. I kept walking until I was inches from him. Kelsey ran onto the porch in her silk bridal robe, champagne in hand. Get her out of here, Dad. She's trying to ruin my day again. I looked at my father. You didn't buy this place, I said calmly. You hid it. I handed him the certified copy of the quitclaim deed. I watched his eyes scan the page. I saw the moment recognition drain the air from his lungs. This house is mine, I said quietly. It has been for 5 years. You're trespassing, and I want you out. A deputy stepped forward. Sir, is this your signature? My father sputtered. It was a tax thing. Is this your signature? Yes. Then you need to vacate. The owner has requested removal. My mother started screaming, not in sorrow, but in fury. You can't do this. We're her parents. I met her eyes. You have 48 minutes, I said. Get your things. Get your guests. Get out. The wedding wasn't cancelled. It was relocated to a motel banquet hall off the highway. I heard the lighting was terrible. I didn't keep the house. I couldn't. The walls held too many echoes. I sold it as is. Even stripped, the market was hot, and the structural work I'd done added significant value. I made a substantial profit. With that capital, I launched my own boutique architecture firm. I named it Eleanor Design, after the only person in that family who ever loved me without conditions. My parents tried to sue again, claiming fraud. It went nowhere. The paper trail was airtight. They ended up in a small apartment, their finances exposed, their reputation shattered. Kelsey stopped speaking to me, which, honestly, was the best wedding gift she could have given. Now I sit in my office, looking out at the Savannah skyline. I'm no longer the fixer. I'm the builder. I cut the cord, and, for the first time, I'm not afraid of falling. I built a new foundation, one they can never touch. That's the real justice here. The best revenge wasn't the eviction. It wasn't the humiliation. It was taking the resources they tried to steal, and using them to plant something they could never burn down. If you've ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, share this story. And tell me, what was the moment you finally said, enough?